I used to think love could survive anything sickness, loss, poverty, whatever storm life threw at you. I believed love could outlast it. My name is Julia. I'm 42 years old, and I was married to a man who proved me wrong in every possible way. The night I realized it, I was sitting in a one-room apartment above a laundromat, surrounded by boxes that still smelled like disinfectant and the stale perfume of the life I used to have. I stared at the ceiling fan, turning slow, listening to the hum, wondering how something so small could sound like a countdown. 3 months earlier, I had a house, a car, a marriage people envied. Then David got sick. Stage 3 colon cancer. The doctors said surgery might save him if we acted fast. We had insurance, but the deductible was a nightmare. I sold my jewelry, emptied our savings, and took out a loan in my name because his credit was wrecked. I worked double shifts at the clinic while sitting by his bed every night, feeding him, bathing him, listening to him swear he'd never forget what I'd done for him. I believed him. I believed every trembling word that came out of his mouth. The surgery worked. They said he was cancer-free. I remember holding his hand in the hospital, thanking God we made it. But the man who came home wasn't the one I'd fallen in love with. He was quieter, colder, full of resentment. He looked at me like a reminder of everything he'd lost, not everything he'd survived. When I went back to work, he accused me of liking the attention. When I cooked, he said it tasted cheap. I thought it was trauma, the kind of mood swings that come from near death. But then he stopped wearing his ring, stopped saying my name like it mattered. 2 months later, he told me he needed time to find himself. He packed a bag and moved into a rented condo downtown that I later found out belonged to his boss. I kept paying his medical bills because I couldn't stomach seeing his credit ruined. That's what love does. It makes you care for people who'd let you bleed if it meant they could stay dry. I was still making payments the night he filed for divorce. I found out through a lawyer's email, not his voice. And when I tried to call him, he sent me a text that said, "You deserve someone better. Don't make this harder. I thought the world had ended." Then, 3 weeks later, his ended instead. His boss was investigated for fraud. The company collapsed. David lost his job, the condo, everything. He called me, voice shaking, saying he needed somewhere to stay until he figured things out. I should have said no. But part of me, the part still wearing that invisible wedding ring, let him come back. He showed up with one suitcase and eyes full of practiced regret. For a while, I believed him again. He told me he wanted to rebuild what we lost. But every night I caught him on his phone, whispering to someone, smiling in the dark. I pretended not to see. Until one morning, I walked past the bathroom and saw his phone light up on the counter. A message flashed from someone named T. It said, "Morning, babe. Did she sign yet?" That's when I knew the truth. He hadn't come back for love. He came back for my name, my credit, and the apartment lease that was still under me. I didn't cry this time. I just stared at the mirror and saw a stranger looking back, one who was finally done being kind. The next week, I went to the bank and closed our joint account. I stopped paying the bills in his name. Then I called the landlord and told him David had moved out. When David confronted me, I acted innocent. I said the bank must have made a mistake. That night, he slammed the door and stormed out to meet his mystery woman. I waited until morning, packed his clothes, and left them in trash bags by the curb. A month passed. He called again, this time begging. He said he was broke, that the woman he left me for had vanished with what little he had left. I listened quietly, heart steady. Then he said the one thing that almost made me laugh. "Julia, I think God's giving us a second chance." I told him he was right. God was giving me one. See, while he was out chasing his new life, I'd been talking to one of his old colleagues, a man named Grant, who used to manage finances for the company David worked at. Grant told me something interesting, that David had stolen company data and tried to sell it to a competitor before the fraud case exploded. He still had proof, emails, messages, transfer logs, and he'd never told the investigators because David had promised him a cut that never came. I asked Grant what he wanted for the files. He said nothing. He just wanted to see David pay for the mess he made. So I gave the files to the investigator handling the case. 3 weeks later, David was arrested for corporate theft and fraud. I didn't watch the news when it aired. I just sat by the window, sipping tea, and listened to the city move like nothing happened. He tried calling me from jail, but I blocked the number. I didn't need to hear his excuses anymore. When the trial ended, he got 18 months. I went to court only once, not to testify, just to see. He looked smaller than I remembered, like all that arrogance had finally burned out. He saw me across the room, but I didn't flinch. I waited until the sentence was read. Then I left quietly. I didn't need to say a word. A few months later, I used the money I'd saved to open a small wellness clinic with a friend from work. We called it Renew. I laughed when I realized the irony. Every time I unlocked those doors, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who thought saving someone meant they'd stay. Now, sometimes when clients talk about heartbreak, I tell them something I learned the hard way. You don't get even by breaking someone back. You get even by never needing them again. I heard David got out early. Someone said he's working night shifts in another city, trying to start over. I hope he does, because I already did. I don't hate him anymore. Hate ties you down just like love does. Every morning I walk into my clinic, smell the fresh paint and coffee from the cafe next door, and realize that peace is louder than revenge. That's what freedom sounds like when you finally stop chasing the person who burned you. I didn't rebuild for him. I didn't even rebuild to prove anything. I rebuilt because sometimes the sweetest revenge is learning you never needed saving in the first place.